This episode is brought to you by DistroKid. DistroKid is the easiest way for musicians to get their music into all the platforms: Amazon, Apple, Tidal, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Plus, you've got unlimited uploads, and the artist keeps 100% of what they make. But what I love most about DistroKid is their app. The design of it just makes the whole process so easy. Now you can be sure that you're doing everything you need to do to get your music out there. Go to distrokid.com to check it out or download the app now. Was it true that he was living in a place and he had a little white rat named Oswald that would snort coke?
Yeah, but I mean, that's just because he was lonely. I got a dog when I got to Boulder Creek because I was lonely.
Yeah,
he got a rat, he got
a rat that snorted coke, that actually snorted coke?
That's how he befriended the rat, is to give him some coke. It was like the guy that was managing us, the biggest coke dealer in Northern California. You could get any kind of coke you want.
So that leads into Live Grape, where there was a lot of cocaine around.
That's what that was, yeah.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with the brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 4 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Moby Grape, along with our special guest, Moby Grape guitarist and songwriter Peter Lewis. This is part 3 of our conversation with the man. Here's just a few of the many things Peter and I discuss in this podcast. That time he took psilocybin with some hitmen, how he was hoodwinked into participating in the 20 Granite Creek project, Robert Plant's favorite Moby Grape song, what he did during his 1971 to 1977 self-ordained wandering phase, an almost unbearably intense retelling of the Skip Spence monastery exorcism tale, the Moby Grape album that was mainly an excuse to vacuum up as much cocaine as was humanly possible, and in the director's cut only, a full rundown of the circumstances behind the Real Potatoes shelving. If you're a Moby Grape superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features a whopping 25 additional minutes of essential material. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. This episode is part of a series called Grape Expectations, a Rashomon-style overview of the band Moby Grape. Not only are they one of the all-time best, but there is no crazier story in the history of music than that of the Grape. It includes disastrous tours, lawsuits, police busts, horribly nefarious managers, a fake touring version of the band, mysterious black magic witches, drug-induced madness, insane asylums, and attempted murder with an axe. And no joke, that's just within the band's first 2 years. There will be separate interviews with all 3 living members of the band, Peter Lewis, Don Stevenson, and Bob Mosley, plus an epic interview with band biographer Cam Cobb on the great Skip Spence, and some surprise guests. The only way to hear the entirety of Grape Expectations is to visit patreon.com/discograffiti and subscribe at the major tier. If you don't want to subscribe, you can either click on the Collections tab and simply purchase the whole series, or even get them piecemeal. But the public episodes have been edited down for time, plus the Monday bonus episodes, which is half the series, aren't being aired publicly in full. So if you're a Grape fan, trust me, you'll want to get over to Patreon lickety-split. Coming up, we've got an interview with Lenny Waronker, Denny Tedesco on his incredible new documentary, The Immediate Family, an unprecedentedly intimate interview with Marilyn Wilson Rutherford and her cousin and Honey's bandmate Ginger Blake, plus Season 3 of the Beach Boys and Your Dreams Come True series, which will absolutely, without question, delve deeper into pet sounds and smile than anyone else ever has in history. Plus, an incredibly special Graham Nash deep dive in which Graham himself rates and discusses everything he's ever released. That means solo, CSN, CSNY, Crosby and Nash, and for good measure, Crosby's If I Could Only Remember My Name. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then! In 1969, when you left Nashville, I have no idea what happened to you between May 1969 and 20 Granite Creek when that happened in 1971. So were you writing music? Did you perform? Did you ever visit Bob or Skip? Did you keep in touch with Don and Jerry at all? What happened between 69 and 71?
71. Oh, a lot, I mean, I was in LA, then I came back to Boulder Creek to live up there, and then ended up just alone again in my house. And there was all this shit happening, I was kind of destitute, didn't have a job anymore, didn't work for my grandma, couldn't get paid at $4 an hour. So it was up there. I had a house, but I had no food, But I had a gun. I bought from Mosley, this 22 Magnum. It was a cowboy gun, and with a fast draw holster I got.
So you didn't have a job, but you had
I went kind of cuckoo, me and this other guy would rob houses for food. And if we couldn't, scrounge up a spaghetti dinner or something. And he was a bass player. He ended up playing with me and Jerry in Live Grape, for a couple of years before he passed away. But a young kid when I met him, good looking guy. And I don't know, it's like, I don't know who we thought we were, kind of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or something.
So for those two...
It had to end, and it finally did,
What pulled you back down to reality?
Oh, I don't know. It's just a long story, man. But
hey, I got time.
Before 20 Granite Creek, what I went through to get those songs on that one, right?
Yeah, I mean, look.
So it was like I got a job. I had a job. I got this guy. This was a Hell's Angel. His old lady got me a job playing in this bar in Fresno to get some money so I could buy some food so we could all eat and pay the rent, or not the rent, but the mortgage. And so I went down there to play with this band for a week at this club. And this club was run by this guy that was like a contract killer. He had these other guys that didn't like him and that made friends with me. Somehow I got involved in this weird thing that was going on down there. They gave me a ride back to Santa Cruz, to my house. And they were kind of like, then on the way back, we took psilocybin, and they turned out to be these two guys that were kind of, they're hitmen, and it freaked me out. And, but I didn't let on, how scared I was. And so they kept me, the guy in the front seat was noticing how nervous I got in the back seat, I was sweating bullets, and he looked in the rearview mirror and he said, "You want to get out of the car?" He kind of knew I had picked up on who they were because we were all stoned on the psychedelic, that really heavy psilocybin. And I saw it. I had a vision of these two guys, and they were contract killers, or guys that were trying to get this guy that owned the club that we had just played at. And I got a ride back from them from Fresno. It was a weird situation where they took me back home, but there was a point at which I didn't know where they were going to come back the next day and shoot me or something, it was weird the way we parted when they let me out. And the next day I was sitting down in my house in the storeroom, and the same car drove up, and there was these two guys, and they got out, and one of them took a shotgun out of the back, and they were coming over to where I was. And I just thought, well, this is it, And instead of that, they got rid of these two guys for me that were staying there that I couldn't get rid of, that were staying in my basement or something, and these two fuckers. And I complained about these guys and on the way home from Fresno, and they came back the next day and scared them out of there, and then left. But I thought when I called out the window, what are you doing? What are you doing with that shotgun? Because they had gotten a shotgun out of the car and were walking over to where I was. I said, we're coming over to blow your motherfucking heads off, And so I just thought, well, that's it. There was not much we could do. I mean, they were, it's like a bird looking at a snake. You don't know what it's going to do. They were that kind of people. And so in the end, they just sat down and we smoked a joint. And these two guys that I was staying in my house that I couldn't get rid of, I couldn't tell them to leave or something. They're actually a couple of Hells Angels that were friends of this guy that was married to the chick that got me the job in Fresno. I got involved with these weird people up there, man, So these guys that were like hitman, they scared the Hells Angels out of there. And so the Hells Angels left.
Is this revolving around the Chateau Liberté?
Yeah, it was when that was going on there, yeah. There was all them people in Boulder Creek. The Hells Angels were all over the place, Yeah. I had a couple friends of mine that were Hells Angels,
Yeah.
Anyway, these guys got rid of him for me, right? But then they're just sitting there and they finally just got up and left, right? But I mean, I was like, I swear to God, man, I was never so nervous in my life because they never kind of broke character. They just got up and left, and like they drove off. And I was still coming down off that psilocybin. It was a day later. And right then this chick came up that I met in my cousin's apartment. She was sharing an apartment with my cousin who introduced me to her, who is this chick that had the black Corvette I wrote about going down to Texas. And she came up to visit me right after these two other guys left that were going to kill me or something, I thought, So I was like, she came up with her brother in this black Corvette to visit me, this chick from Texas. Didn't have any idea about what had been going on. I just said, well, I got to get out of here. And they took me to a hotel in San Francisco. Next day I went to Texas with her. Her brother flew home. And that was that song I wrote going down to Texas, was all about that journey I took with her. And that lasted a month. When we got back from that is when the 20 Granite Creek, that's when that started up. So I had these songs.
Did that album kind of save your life then? Because it sounds like you were going 100 miles an hour toward a brick wall.
Doing what?
Okay.
Okay.
He's talking about you were heading toward a brick wall after that experience with the psilocybin and those people. You could have been heading toward a brick wall. And
yeah, well, I got out of there, like I'm an escape artist, so I went down to Texas with this chick and had to cool my heels for about a month. And then somehow when we got back, I started living with her. And then this 20 Granite Creek deal came up and I had that song going down to Texas. And then the Apocalypse is supposed to be about sort of symbolically about that experience with those killer guys, where I saw the end. I had this vision when I was high on psilocybin about the end of the world or something. We were driving back from Fresno, but it actually was happening.
Is that Apocalypse?
Yeah.
I need to ask you a question about Granite Creek. Someone wrote that 20 Granite Creek started as a Peter Lewis solo album that grew into a full Moby Grape.
Yeah, well, that's the producer. I went to him with these songs, and he said, okay. And then the next thing I knew, we were going to do a Moby Grape album.
So was that Rubinson? Did you go to Rubinson with those songs? Rubinson. So what else did you have at that time? Because you have, is it 4 songs on 20 Granite Creek?
3.
Yeah. Your material on this is super strong. What was the rest of your material like at this time? And
it was okay. It was like whatever was going on with those guys.
No, I mean, you had Horse Out in
their
the
lives.
Rain.
They wrote songs about what was going on in their lives, and I wrote songs about what was going on in mine.
Well, with all due respect to everybody involved, you kind of steal the show on this record.
Yeah, but that's because my life was more interesting. I was still out there,
Yeah.
Bouncing off the walls,
Right.
Trying to make sense out of that.
So did Rubin decide it was going to be a Moby Grape record and he didn't tell you?
No, it was a deal that they made before we started working, with Warner's. He made a deal with them. We signed with him. So he got the advance and, charged us for it. You know what I mean? Recouping it. He did some really weird accounting stuff, Rubinson.
So to whatever extent that I know about what happened with Skip. At this time, I know that he had found Gordon Stevens and he was doing pretty well. He was taking his meds. He had like a daily discipline. And, I know that he was dabbling with heroin at the time, but he was kind of his version of a family man. Then 20 Granite Creek happened and he became a shut-in and mainly stayed in his room for months. What was your experience with Skip like during that time?
Well, he was like, he had his own roadie. This guy was a Hell's Angel.
Beaver.
Yeah, Beaver. And Beaver and him, would cook up speed in the sink down in the kitchen to that 20 Grand Creek, man. Like nobody could live with them. So I had them, I don't know what I was doing with my girlfriend. We'd rent a hotel room and go stay there. I'd stay with Don's. He had a house still in Boulder Creek. I'd sold mine. That was a long story. A lot of shit had happened. I had hitchhiked to Alabama with my son during that time between 69 and 20 Grand Creek too, or the last one, whatever, Truly Fine Citizen. So I had gone through a lot of kind of traumatic living, and I couldn't take anymore. It was like Skip was, he was on kind of a demonic kick. Right.
From what I understand, this was the turning point in his life where he decided that he didn't want to try to join up with reality, that he was just going to go in the other direction.
Yeah, I think maybe.
And he was...
I know that he was not somebody that you want to spend the night in a hotel room with or something. He got like that where it was like around him, he had a cocoon of negative energy to protect him from the enemy, which was like what? The world? I don't know. His identity became connected with his ego, and his ego at that time was kind of unchained, like it wouldn't be controlled. You talk about the whole story about how Lucifer fell from grace because he would not accept man as, when I say superior, I mean, he would not share the love of God with a man, with a mortal creature. Skip was kind of like with the angels on that. He was given a vision of eternity, but it was a vision that the devil gives you.
What was it like trying to communicate with him during that time?
Communicate with who?
With Skip.
It's not even there, man.
Right, right.
Not the Skip I remember that welcomed me to the promised land when I first saw him in San Francisco.
From what I hear in the few months that you were there recording the record, he maybe played with you guys for an hour, maybe 2 hours tops.
He didn't play on anything except his own song. He played the koto, which is a Japanese instrument, and he played guitar on Horse in the Rain. He played the guitar solo on Horse in the Rain.
Okay, okay.
Because it was perfect. That's better than Jerry could have done it, And that's Robert Plant's favorite song, Moby Grape song. Horse in the Rain.
Wow, I didn't know that was his favorite. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And from what I heard, you guys were working on a Moby Grape version of Little Hands.
Maybe Gordon says so. Maybe I don't remember all of it, man.
When you look back at that record, what are your feelings toward 20 Granite Creek?
Again, it's like an existential experience of something that's going on between these guys and me at one point, and it was at a later date. Like we had gone through all of this together, like going apart and coming together and sharing our music, going together, coming apart and sharing our music and so forth. And it's been going on since 1966 and it's still going on. I mean, it's not going to not ever be going on.
How would you characterize the experience of making the record? The experience?
Distracted, like in a sort of haze of pot smoke and driving around with my girlfriend up on the peninsula, going down to the studio that Rubinson had to do some of the singing or overdubs, and then going to an ice cream store and eating a banana split and then smoking, stuff like that.
I heard you went to get ice cream like 30, 40 times during the making of the record.
I don't know why we did. It was just, there was this place where you could get ice cream right next to the studio down there. It's a lot of downtime. Scott
Charbonneau from the Moby Grape Facebook group, he wanted to ask a question. He remembers reading in Relics back in the late 80s that Reprise was planning to release a Peter Lewis solo LP in 1972, which obviously didn't happen. Is there any...
Yeah, well, because I didn't have any songs, man. I mean, I had a couple, but I was like too busy sporting around with my girlfriend from Texas who had all this money, and I didn't have to work. I mean, it was on Easy Street until she got rid of me, and then I had to go. And it got tough.
Between 1971 with the Fillmore Show and 20 Granite Creek and Live Grape, so that's a period of 7 years. What were you doing during that time?
I would say I was like with her part of the time, and then I went into my wandering phase, which was like just going from one parent's house to the next. You know, if they got sick of me, I'd have to. I remember going to San Francisco and getting a job selling Chronicle and Examiner subscriptions door to door, and then living in a boarding house. You know, I mean, I was like going from pillar to post, not playing. I may have had a gig playing in some gay bar up there. I remember doing that, just playing songs and sitting there. Then going someplace else, going to be a counselor at a camp in Cincinnati. You know, my mom's friend got me a gig back there doing that, which I did for about 2 weeks, and then I left there. And, you know, it's just like I was I couldn't stay wherever I got. I just didn't belong wherever I was at. You know, I just kept moving. And so finally, Jerry called. It was my dad's house, and he said, we're going to play some music. And so I went right back because, I mean, what else am I going to do? That's the next step in my journey through life, right? To be up there with Jerry.
What happened? Now, that's Live Grape, right?
Yeah.
So before that, though, is the exorcism. And by the way, I was on the phone with you 30 years ago, and you told me this story in great detail, but it was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Talk to me about why this was such a fundamental experience in your relationship with Skip.
Oh, yeah. Well, they didn't know what to do with him. You know, they didn't know what to do because he had been, you know, he'd go in there. The guy was selling coke that we were being managed by, and he'd snort all his coke. You know, it became a problem. So we got Skip his own place to live. And he was just really not happening. He was not completely demonic, I would say at this point. But the part that wasn't demonic was very weak. If you look at possession, you know, he had earmarks of being a guy that had more than just a problem, you know, with schizophrenia, which is how they diagnosed him. And so I took him to this monastery. You know, we spent the night in these cells that they had up there. And Skip went through this when there was no drugs to go to or nothing, nobody to think about. I mean, all those monks do is like pray about, you know, a victory of good over evil. I mean, that's their life. They've dedicated their lives to that. And they'll do any kind of discipline to win that war with evil, you know. They're warriors, spiritual warriors. And they heard Skip that night. We were in those cells down below the cloister where they lived, going through all these changes, being, you know, howling and stuff, just like, you know, you'd hear in The Exorcist. It was going on right next to me. I was in the room next to him. And it just, I don't know how to explain my feelings about everything at that point, how I'd gotten myself into that position, but it was kind of like being maneuvered into it by the devil and, you know, not realizing that's what was going to happen until it was too late.
Weren't you afraid that he was going to come after you like he came after?
Well, it sounded like I was there. I don't know, man. You know, it's like all of a sudden you realize I got caught. I'm in a trap. I mean, I was maneuvered into this by my own feelings of trying to help somebody. I got myself in a position where they're going to kill me, you know, like the devil was doing this. I was inspiring me to take him to this place where we'd be alone and there would be nobody else around. These monks were not there. They were in a cloister above this place where we were staying. So we were just me and him. There was nobody else in those rooms, just me and him alone in a mountaintop in the middle of nowhere. And he was flipping out in the next room. It sounds like growling sounds and sounds of being thrown up against the wall, a body, and screaming and stuff. And it's like The Exorcist. At some point, it started to taper off. And I guess I'd been awake all night listening to this, on my knees, praying that he wouldn't come in there and kill me. And then finally, it started to subside and I just fell asleep. When I woke up, it was like noon. I went out and Skip was outside and they had a little place where you park. And he was just wandering around, you know, and I went out and he started talking to me like this normal, like none of this had happened. And I just went along with them. We went down, we got something to eat at this restaurant they had on Highway 1, right below where this place was. And we went back up there, and it was getting dark, and he started to get edgy again, and right then this priest came down from the cloister, and I was talking, he was this guy that had heard all that, and he was on a retreat from Rome, this guy. He said, well, your friend is possessed. But the good news is he's not completely possessed. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, when somebody's completely possessed, there's no sign of it. When I say that, I mean the way they look at it, you see. And so he told me we had to leave because it's not whatever this is that's going on between you and this guy, it's going on between you and him. And it's not like you can take him here and expect anybody to help. You have to be willing to go through something, some kind of catharsis with this guy that is personal. If you really want to help him, you can, but I want you to get in your car and leave. And when you're driving back, don't touch him, don't talk to him, just drive the car. Don't lose control of your feeling, or, you just concentrate on getting where you're going, and you'll be all right, and he'll get better. So we started driving out of there, and we got halfway down the hill, and I hear these same sounds I was hearing the night before in this other room. And then I looked kind of out of the corner of my eye, and I saw whether it was my imagination or making sense out of what the sounds were like. And then I saw this great wolf's face, it was like there, and that's like teeth, And Skippy at that point didn't have any teeth, So all of a sudden I got worried. And we kept driving. I kept my hands on the wheel. I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to acknowledge him. And, he gets go bad. I start freaking out. And just at that point, I hear a voice telling me to stop the car. And I know it's the devil, so I just don't listen to him. And if I can keep myself from listening to the voice, if I can just keep my focus on the future the next second, everything will be okay. And as soon as I was able to do that at all, instead of being freaked out, I got angry. And the anger started to build up in me, and so to a point where I thought, I will stop the car and I'll kill him, and then it'll all be over. And somehow I thought about who that was talking to me and saying these things, and I realized it was not, it was the devil, man. So I started freaking out again, but I still kept driving. And through all of this, we went through, I don't know how many cycles of that until we got sort of closer to San Jose, where Skip, he wasn't doing that anymore, wasn't forcing me to go through these changes. And at that point, it was kind of like we were just sitting there again, like we were the same guys we were when we first met. And then he wanted to get out of the car at some point, and I let him out, and he walked across the street, and I was just looking at him, and he turned around, and he just waved at me and walked off.
Oh, hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show per week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show-per-week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti. This episode is brought to you in part by Bespoke LA. Located in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles, Bespoke LA is the modern podcaster's dream come true. It's got 2 podcast pods available, one with audio only and the other with both audio and video. Just think, you can start your own podcast tomorrow without investing a single penny in equipment. What, you don't have experience editing? Don't even sweat it. For an additional fee, Bespoke LA can edit your podcast. Or not, it's entirely up to you. Rates start at $75 an hour with discounts if you book 4 sessions at once. Go to bespokela.com/podcast. That's BSPOKELA.com/podcast for more information or to book your time today. And be sure to tell them that Dave sent you for a one-time 25% discount. That's an unbelievable story. So all the shit that was building up between you guys and with Skip was
that's how it ended up for him and me, But he had gone through all this, and there was no actual memory. When I say there was a physical memory of it, but there was no feelings about it left. So you can imagine what I'm just telling you, man. You'll get the whole Moby Grape story,
right?
Where there's actually, you can remember all this, but there's no real feelings connected to it. You're not emotionally connected to it anymore, and that's what happened between me and Skip.
So much.
There were no judgments being made about it. In order for Skip to be Skip again, I had to stop judging him. Do you understand?
Yeah.
That's what was going on. I mean, that's sort of, it goes to the core of what we're all trying to experience in this world. A state of non-judgment where you don't make judgments anymore.
So much of what happened in Skip's life is so bound up with mythology, and a lot of it is just that, what is...
Well, that's what happens to a guy like that.
Right. So right before this whole experience, was it true that he was living in a place and he had a little white rat named Oswald that would snort coke?
Yeah, but I mean, that's just because he was lonely. I got a dog when I got to Boulder Creek because I was lonely. Yeah, he got a rat, he
got a rat that snorted coke, that actually snorted coke?
That's how he befriended the rat, is to give him some coke. It was like the guy that was managing us, the biggest coke dealer in Northern California. You could get any kind of coke you want.
So that leads into Live Grape, where there was a lot of cocaine around.
That's what that was, yeah.
Right. So these are the coke years now?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess so. I mean, so I got out of there. I met Corinne and then I left because I was just...
When did you meet Corinne?
77.
Oh, so right during this time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's when I get out of the whole thing,
Yeah.
But like you say, you never get totally out of it.
Corinne, thank Christ for you. That's all I have to say.
Well, that's all it is. It's just like whether you make it or not.
Well, it sounds like Corinne, without even knowing your story with her fully, it sounds like she's a large part of why you're still alive.
It might be. Yeah. And I also being given a chance to put it in perspective, like evidence on there was less like, you just have to keep your head above water.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all you're trying to do. There's no perspective, you can't really get into a songwriter mode. I mean, or a thing where you can actually, have time to sit down and think about your songs. And maybe that's no good. Maybe it's only cool when you're just doing it. Because you have to, because you're responding to something that you need to say, rather than just be able to write a cool song.
Did you like what you were doing on Live Grape, what the band was doing?
I don't know. I mean, I was just not some of it,
I like that Lost Horizon.
Yeah, well, that I wrote before, but it was like, I liked the way it had a mood. Yeah, I liked the mood on it.
It sounds like an old folk tune.
Yeah, it might be, I mean, I tried to play folk rock.
Yeah.
I had a guitar we got, back then. This guy that was a dead roadie brought me this guitar. It was like an alembic guitar. It was like what they use, their alembic sound system. It was part of that. And he brought it to me, and I started playing it for about a year. I played it. And it had that weird sound like it does in Lost Horizon, where it sounds like very ceramic sounding.
What about the experience of playing on Must Be Going Now, Dear? You know the Skip song that he kind of made up on the spot?
Oh, yeah, that just happened on stage one night. You just wrote it right there. Yeah, he started doing that, and that's what you're hearing. We were doing a live record, that's what I called Live Grape, and we were just on stage, and they were recording, and he just started going, dang, like he did, and we all kind of chimed in with him, and then it turned into that song.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
So between that...
it was descriptive of him in that, at that point, and the people that he was meeting. Skip was a lot cooler, really, than... I don't want to characterize him as being some kind of demonic presence, because he wasn't all the time.
Right.
But you put him in a certain context with these monks, and yes, because that's what they do. That's what that is to them. That's their place, and you're there. You got yourself to that place, so that's what you're going to have to deal with, kind of thing.
Right.
But Skip, and as long as you give him some coke, he's cool. He's going to be there. But, when you say all these things, when I say all these things, I'm saying them because if you're going to rip somebody off for their publishing and their money and everything, and not giving up to, just take everything and let them get out there and take all the blows for you, which is what Cates was kind of doing. I would blame him for that. A musician will take anything he can get. If he can't get money, he'll get drugs. If he can't, from some groupie, get her favors and drugs because he doesn't get paid. It's like if you're getting paid, you probably don't need to take, the booby prize like that. And that's what was going on with Moby Grape. A lot of that was just because, it's like, I'm not absolving us from any responsibilities here, man. I'm just saying I can see it happening, not just in our case, but just in general, because I've grown up or spent my life hanging around musicians. And if they don't get paid, usually, musicians will play for free. They like to play. If they get paid, then they don't have to take all the booby prizes, kind of thing. That's how I've seen the thing operate when I look around, see the friends that I've known that have made money in the music business, which is the most difficult thing to do. Like I say, you got to get paid before you get famous, But the ones that haven't gotten paid, they're going to play, They'll take anything they can get, to just make the whole thing worthwhile. There's all of that, There's no way to avoid any of that, man. You're going to have to deal with the tyranny of other artists if you're an artist. But then to get to where you're just cool with being you, I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
Who can do that is Jackson Browne. That's why I like Jackson.
Are you cool with being Peter Lewis?
Do what?
Are you cool with being Peter Lewis?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
You getting there?
Yeah. Here's what I'd say about the whole thing is like the spirit of Moby Grape is, and as always has been and always will be, whatever we were doing together, we couldn't do by ourselves. In other words, we needed each other to make that music in the first record, right?
Yeah. What
we proved is that somehow there's something that is worth proving that you can only do when you're doing it with other people, then it's worth proving that you can do all by yourself. That's the spirit of Moby Grape. Do you know what I'm saying?
If you could say anything right now to Matthew Cates, what would it be?
Fuck you.
Okay, good. My last question is this Jerry Miller benefit in Petaluma on June 22nd. Have you decided if you're going?
I will, if I can, sure.
Okay. June 22nd in Petaluma, California, the Jerry Miller benefit. Unfortunately, he certainly would have been involved if he could have.
He won't be there himself, but in spirit, maybe,
Yeah, he'll definitely.
Try to get his spirit there, even though he can't be there in person. And I think the spirit of Jerry is like this. You can do something with the other people that you can't do by yourself, But that's more worth doing than it is just to be self-sufficient. Jerry is a great musician in the sense that he's fun to play with, He was a strong player. And so he's sharing that with you. You got to come up to speed, but he's, with him. But that's good.
Yeah.
That's good, man, mean, it's not so much of a backup guy. He's like, I think he's not a good backup musician, but he's fun to play with.
You guys are all so different in what you bring to the table for the band. I'm talking about the 5 guys who started this band. You guys are all so different, so disparate in what you focus on for your various strengths, that without each other, it's very interesting how different the band becomes. But your story,
you learn as you go, man. You learn about life as you go. You kind of try to share that or adjust to it, and then keep playing.
I really want to thank you for your body of work. There's a lot of music out there that I like that doesn't really change me fundamentally. And your work is important to me. And it has been for 30 plus years. And so I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It has really touched me, and it's really changed who I am fundamentally as a person.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dave.
I really appreciate you so much, Peter. And, I think honestly, maybe it took, having the greatness that you bring to the table as Peter Lewis reflected back from Corinne's eyes for you to understand what it is that is important about you in this world. But you are important in this world, and you matter. You really do. Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you. Thanks.
I love you, buddy.
I love you too.
All right. That about does it. Stay tuned, because next week we are officially kicking off season 3 of The Beach Boys and Your Dreams Come True, except we'll also be weaving in another series with it. Welcome to the Pet Sounds Graham Nash Super Mash. Episode 1, conveniently enough, is a little from column A and a little from column B. It's Graham Nash on how Pet Sounds changed his life. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Monday, the major tier gets a very special treat. And man, do I mean special. Monday's bonus episode is part 4 of our conversation with Moby Grape and Skip Spence biographer Cam Cobb on the life of Skippy. In this episode, we'll be covering the story of brother band Weird Harold, what happened to Skip's post-Ora band Pachuco, and why it is exactly that, no joke, the Doobie Brothers owe their very existence to Skip. There will be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Monday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. Don't miss it, or you'll only be getting part of the story. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier gets their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of Graham Nash lavishing praise on Pet Sounds. It's the episode as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then come Friday, everyone else gets to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Peter Lewis, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Bespoke LA, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the classic rock and roll from the 1960s is to go to the Beach Boys Season 1, Catch a Wave, 1961 to 1964, from episode 189 on, the Righteous Brothers Bill Medley interview, that's 181 and 182, My interview with the Free Design, that's 160 to 162. My epic interview with the Mamas and Papas Michelle Phillips, that's 141 to 159. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that's 137. My 12-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander from the Association, that's 109 to 113. Vashti Bunyan reading her entire output, that's 103 to 104. Sergio Diaz from Os Mutants, that's 86 and 87. Bert Summer, that's 83 and 84. Sweetwater is episode 79. A tribute to David Crosby, 77 and 78. Andrew Tuttle rates The Monks, 74. Jim Florentine on Black Sabbath is 64 to 68. Lou Barlow on the Zombies is 59 and 60. Marvin Gaye biographer David Ritz rates Marvin Gaye, that's 45 to 47. Blind Faith is 43. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, it's 32 and 33. Bob Forrest rates the band is 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rates the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy rates David Axelrod as 17. Badfinger is 16. The Bee Gees is 10 and 11. Sly and the Family Stone is 5, 6, and 7. And Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, June 27th, we're coming at you with Graham Nash loving on the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!